So the Notebook is a book that I was asked to read and transliterate by the Antiques Roadshow. It was a teeny tiny book filled with Shakespeare quotations, and it had been presented to the Antiques Roadshow and they'd gone crazy about it.
You showed this to me, I opened it up and I saw Shakespeare, comedies and tragedies in what is almost certainly a 17th century hand.
They wanted to know precisely what this book was, and they thought, maybe this is a book by Shakespeare. So they were incredibly excited by it. Then they asked me, as someone who works on early modern texts and can read that writing, to analyse the book and say what it in fact was. And when I read it, it was deeply exciting. It wasn't, alas, new, fresh, actual Shakespeare, but it was a record from someone who had read Shakespeare's Folio. And Shakespeare's Folio is the collected works published in 1623, so 400 years ago this year. And this person had read that collected works and had taken quotations out of every single bit of it, all the preliminary matter and all the 36 plays in folio order. So this was an obsessive fan, an absolute geek, and maybe the earliest one we know of. This book will be from about the 1630s, I think. Frustratingly, we don't know the name of the Notebook's original owner, but we know some things that give us real clues as to who he is and his personality. So one of the big clues is that at the back of the book, there's a seal, which is to say there's a plug of wax and someone has pressed their signet ring into it and their family shield is there. Now this is the shield of the Waterhouse family. So we either know that this is a Waterhouse and he's sealed his book, or this is a book of loved quotations by someone else. Maybe this is his loved other friend. So he either is Waterhouse or he's a friend of a Waterhouse. The other thing is I think we can guess that he is male and a student. And I think we can guess this from the fact that at the back of the book, there are some notes on Aristotle in Latin. And women didn't go to university, they weren't typically taught Latin, they were very seldom taught Greek. So I think this is a guy who's at university. And then there are funny little things about his character that we can tell from his choice of quotation. So one is that he has certain obsessions. He's obsessed with thunder, he's obsessed with pregnancy, that's a weird one, he's obsessed with eyebrows, he's really into nature. So we can tell certain things by his choice of quotation. To do writing that small, he will have needed not a normal quill pen, not like a goose quill pen. He'd have needed a quill from a smaller bird, like a robin quill or a crow quill, to do that tiny writing. So he's showing off his craft at minuteness. I think the Notebook gives us a really fascinating insight into early readers. So we often think about the people who went to see Shakespeare in the theatre and the people who loved his performances. But when the first folio was published 400 years ago this year, that gave the chance for people to get a reading relationship with Shakespeare. And I think what's really interesting is our guy and other people were reading Shakespeare not the way we do, with kind of concerned reverence, and we're sort of distant from it and we admire it. This was a really active reader, and he was reading it because it was great, because he wanted to take the good stuff and own it and put it in his tiny writing and maybe carry it around his person in his little book. So he adored it, he wanted to have it, he wanted it to be a bit his, and he was reading with a view to being sort of in dialogue with Shakespeare, or sort of changing Shakespeare around a bit and talking in such a way that he's talking and Shakespeare's kind of talking, or writing in such a way that he's writing but there are Shakespeare bits in there.
She speaks, and 'tis such sense that my sense breeds with it. He speaks, and 'tis such sense my sense breeds with it. Never came trouble to my house in the likeness of your grace. Never came trouble to me in your likeness.
So this was a really different way of reading a text. As I say, not reading a text to admire it so much as to possess it and wrap it up in yourself. And actually, I think we can all learn something a bit from that. There's something very exciting about being inside literature rather than just admiring it. And I think we could take more active quotations ourselves and lard our conversations with them more and see what happens.